Hello, everyone, and happy Wednesday, wherever you are. If it's morning, good morning. If it's afternoon, good afternoon. Welcome to our May 18th webinar, Fundraising Action Planning. And I'm pleased to say hello to our moderator, Mui.
Welcome. Thank you so much, Jack. It's an honor to be here today with each of you. And I am a trainer for the Fundraising Academy. I am also the co-founder of the American Muslim Community Foundation. As Jack mentioned, I'll serve as your moderator today. Before we get started, we have a couple of notes. This webinar will be conversational at the opportunity to ask questions during, as well as a 30-minute Q&A following the presentation. Please submit any questions you have in the Q&A option in the Zoom controls. Please add any comments or tech support needs, questions to the chat. Closed captioning is always available, and for this webinar, to enable this setting, click the CC option in your Zoom controls. Caption size can be adjusted in the video settings under accessibility. In the days following the webinar, this webinar recording and slide deck will be made accessible via our online learning portal. You'll receive an email with a link to register for our free portal so you can access the slide deck and recording at your leisure. So the Fundraising Academy provides education and training to fundraisers throughout the US and beyond. Through online and in-person workshops, the Fundraising Academy trains emerging fundraisers to deepen relationships with donors through a cause-selling approach. This webinar will guide you through the fundamental steps to develop your rationale for creating a fundraising action plan, exploring questions to ask prior to starting your planning process, and map out your key planning steps. You get to curate your curated resources and templates to kick off your planning today. So, here today with us, we have my mentor, Jack Alato. He is a fantastic champion for CFREs everywhere. As a CFRE himself, throughout his career, Jack has served in a variety of fundraising positions in hospital, social service, and the arts as a development director, a major gift officer, a legacy giving manager, and a foundation and corporate relations manager. So he has a true wealth of knowledge and has taught a variety of fundraising classes at the Center for Volunteer and Nonprofit Leadership, JFK University, and he's served in panels about strategic planning, ethics and fundraising, cause selling, donor loyalty, and donor-centered fundraising. He's moderated panels on strategies for building a strong major gifts program, trends and strategies for nonprofit fundraising, and stewardship gifts and cultivating donors. Thank you so much for being here, Jack.
And thank you so much for that great introduction, Rui. So let's start with our objectives. So I hope to go over why we plan, what planning accomplishes for both leadership and the organizations. What are the components of a meaningful plan, creating your fundraising plan, and a fundraising plan sample. But let me tell you what I think are the essential plans in any nonprofit organization. Every nonprofit starts with a strategic plan, or it should start with a strategic plan. In that strategic plan, we outline our programs and activities. Not only the programs and activities that we are doing now, but we also look to the future and see what kind of programs and activities we will do sometime in the future. After that strategic plan is established, we create our fundraising plan. Our fundraising plan talks about the ways we are going to fund those activities and programs that we outlined in our strategic plan. And finally, we have the marketing and communications plan. The marketing and communication plan talks about how we are going to communicate to our various constituencies the programs, the activities that we outlined in our strategic plan, as well as the benefits of giving to our organization to advance those programs and activities. Now, I want to tell you right off the bat, there are other plans that we're not going to talk about today. We're not going to talk about acquisition plans or engagement plans, cultivation plans. which are so critical to fundraising, as well as stewardship plans. But we are going to talk about briefly strategic, more on fundraising, and then a little bit about marketing and communication. So let's do a poll. How many years of experience do you have in individual giving? And you could put that in chat, or I'm sorry, in the poll, which I see right now on my screen. Years of experience in individual giving. I hate to tell you, mine is more than 10 years. But
You should be very proud to say it, as am I.
So quickly, let's do that so that we have more time to chat about our plans. Can you see the results of the poll, Mui?
Yep, they are piling in. So we have 100% of our participants in. So we can close the and share the results. And sharing the results, you should be able to see 24% say that they've been in the profession less than a year. We have 24% also more than 10 years. So a wide variety and mix in between. Really exciting to see a majority of people in that 1 to 5 year range. Yeah.
Great. So let's do a community share, which is, what plans are you currently using at your organization? If you have put this in chat. If you have a strategic plan, tell us about it. Briefly, we have a strategic plan, we have a fundraising plan, we have a marketing and communications plan. If you have those other plans that I mentioned, put those in chat as well. Let's see what we got.
Great. So we see a strategic plan, marketing and communications plan, fundraising plan, working on a communication plan, marketing, a lot of strategic plans. And hopefully what your organizations are realizing is that all of these plans need to communicate to each other. They have to have timelines that support one another, and a lot more strategic plans, multi-year fundraising plans, 3-year strategic plan, annual giving calendar and plan. Lots of great suggestions coming in.
Great. This is great. And I see some of the names I recognize, Victoria and Patrick. Welcome. Glad you guys could make it. So let's talk about why plan. That's the first thing. What does it accomplish? And I want to say that I want to start with that planning is a process of determining how to best achieve some desired outcomes. So I'm just going to concentrate on 3 things here. So one thing that planning does is it determines focus. What are we going to focus on? Planning allows the organization to set a course for a period of time. I saw some people in chat say we have a 3-year strategic plan. That's the period of time. Planning outlines strategies for how you get to where you are going, what you want to achieve. So it creates an awareness of what resources. When we talk about resources, what resources are needed in our strategic plan or in our fundraising plan? We're talking about 3 things: people, time to achieve that goal, and money. What's our budget? If we have, for example, in our fundraising plan, a big capital campaign, we're going to have to talk about the people we're going to need to implement that capital campaign, how much money it's going to cost, that's our budget, and how long is it going to take us. So all plans do talk about resources. Another thing that a plan does, which is really important, it provides the foundation for management. It is the roadmap for management to become successful, and plans position the organization for success. You're going to get this PowerPoint and these notes on accountability and etc. So, but I just wanted to touch on a few things. So what does a plan accomplish? Remember this: planning is a process, a product, and an attitude and behaviors. The process is important, as is the end result. The process of planning, and in the plans that I've been involved in, have been really transformative of the organization. Engaging in a strategic plan transforms us into what we're going to become. We envision things in the future. The other thing that a plan does and accomplishes, it clarifies values. It tests your mission, and it articulates a vision. Do you know what that does when you do those three things? That builds your organizational culture. That's what it does. And that's such a key component of a healthy organization. The other thing that plans do and accomplish is engages the hearts and minds of staff and board and other key constituencies. And when you engage all these constituencies in your plan, what do you accomplish? Ownership. And that's really key to your plan's success. So what are some of the planning steps? The first thing is you decide that you're going to do a plan. You have to have consensus. Everyone needs to agree that this organization needs a plan, whether it's a fundraising plan or a strategic plan. Then you ask yourself, do we need outside counsel to come in and lead us in this planning process? We look at the planning models, and guys, there's not just one planning model. There are several. If you Google strategic planning models or fundraising planning models, you're going to come up with lots of things that are going to come before you. Another thing that we talk about as a step in planning, we form a planning committee, and we talk about the role that they play. We clarify group values. We examine the environment and the marketplace that we're working in. Some other steps include, we look at our mission. Is it still relevant? When you look at a strategic plan, we ask the question, is our mission still relevant? Do we need to change it, or do we need to modify it? We look at strategic direction. Where do we want to go? We outline strategies and programs to achieve that goal that we set via our strategic direction. We test the financial feasibility of the plan. Do we have the resources? Do we have the money to do these additional programs or activities? We draft the plan, we share it widely with stakeholders to get ownership, and then we present it to our board for approval. Here are 9 factors that we think make a great plan. Tailor it to your organization. If you go talk to an outside consultant about doing a strategic plan or a fund development plan, and they come in and they show you this model that they use, ask them to move along, because not one model fits every organization. One size and one process does not fit all. You have to tailor your planning strategies, how you're going to do that plan based on your organization. Number 2, you have to involve all of those who will be affected by the plan. That's the board, that's the staff, that's your key constituents. And then you have to build ownership of leadership, and that means staff and board who support the planning process. Why do you have to build that support? Because they're going to be the ones that guide that resulting plan. Number 4, the person leading the planning process must be skilled in doing so. If you're going to seek an outside counsel, make sure they know how to run a planning process. Commitment to time. It takes a long time. It's very labor intensive to develop any one of these plans. Receptivity to new information and willingness to change. That's really important as you go through this process. That means that board and staff must be receptive to change. Adequate and appropriate information upon which to make decisions. That's really important. Look at your history, what you've done. Put together your planned resources, your mission, previous plans, etc. Look at those and make sure you use those as you build this new plan. Ongoing critical thinking and behavior. And finally, dialogue. This means arguing, deciding, and then coming together in alignment. So, creating your fundraising action plan. Remember what I said earlier. You start with the strategic plan, you outline your activities and programs, any that you want to bring in. Then you have your fundraising plan in which you talk about how you're going to fund those programs and activities, and then marketing and communications how you are going to tell the public about both your strategic and plans, their activities and programs, and how you intend to support. One of the things that we have to remember about marketing, one of the key components of marketing is donor-centric marketing. You have to tell your donors via marketing and communications how their interests, passions, and values are met by giving to your organization. The process, which is that first arrow up there, what process will you use to create your fundraising plan? This is really important. What are the things that you're going to bring? You're going to look at previous year's activities, other plans that you have. Then you have direction. Where are we going? How will we get there? And why gifts will help us get to that place. The fundraising plan is a vision and a blueprint for your future. It answers the big questions like, what are the strategies that we are using now to raise money? What strategies will we use in the future? Who are our constituents? What do our constituents value? And why do they value those things? We also look at things like what is happening in the world outside of our organization. Right now, if you are writing a strategic plan or a fundraising plan, you're talking pandemic. You're talking about how things are changing as a result of the COVID, etc. We ask things like, how much will it cost? How will we ensure that we are accountable? And that's ethics and accountability. Then the foundation. Mui mentioned this earlier, and I'm going to reiterate it here. The strategic plan is the foundation for fund development. It's really hard to raise money without strategic direction. The fund development plan must be partnered with your strategic plan. In fact, as I said earlier, it's the second stage in planning. The thing about all these plans, they must be approved formally by your board. The board adopts the fund development strategy and plan when it approves your budget. The board has to understand how to raise money, and board members have to accept their obligation to participate in the fundraising process. So those are some of the things that we talk about before we even create a plan. So what are some of the questions that we have to answer before we can even start writing this plan? So one of the questions, we have to examine the past. What do we need the money for? What do we need the money for in the past? And remember, I want to repeat this several times. It's not just about money. Your fundraising plan is not just about money. It could be about strategies like having your board go out and raise money. It could be about building a culture of philanthropy. There's lots of things. We look at what happened in the past. What were our successes? What were our challenges? Then we look at goals. Do we want to acquire new donors? Do we want to renew new donors? Do we want to increase our revenue and our strategic goals? All of these things happen to be. One of our strategic goals may be to acquire new donors. That doesn't have a dollar amount to it. It might be just strategizing ways that we can acquire new donors. That's a goal. We also look at our resources. What resources do we have in terms of staff and money for a budget? And what gaps do we need in resources? For example, if you're starting a capital campaign and you have maybe one major gift officer, you may say, we need to acquire more major gift officers so that we can raise more money for our capital campaign. So other questions that we might ask, do we need to update our mission? Do we need to update our vision, values? How do we involve our board more in this fundraising activity? What about donor acceptance policies? Do we have donor acceptance policies? Here's a question in chat I like to see people answer, Mui. Do you have donor acceptance policies? Ask that question and let's see what kind of response we have.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Thank you. Answering these questions will tell us where to focus our attention. On this slide here, when you answer these questions, it tells us where to focus our attention. It helps us control our workflow, and it protects us from the good idea. One of the most important benefits of having a fundraising plan is that it protects us from the good idea. How many times have I sat in board meetings and someone says, "Can we get some money from Bill Gates?" And I always think, if you have a good fundraising plan, maybe somebody knows Bill Gates, and that should be part of one of the strategies that you have. But I hear that a lot. Or we want to make sure there are not other good ideas. Or like, maybe we should do an ice bucket challenge, or maybe we should do some other very successful event that we've seen. And the other thing about having a plan is that it moves us from being reactive to proactive, and it builds confidence in our fundraising. Any things
We
in
have a
chat?
few,
Yeah, let's
a
hear
lot
them.
of people are saying yes, and we have one that said no as well. So included in many of the resources and templates and guides that we have, I think we can definitely include something in the portal as well for you afterwards and give you a few examples. Jack, in the organizations that you've helped, and feel free, anybody on the chat as well, what have been scenarios that the gift acceptance policy has helped guide the conversation in donor cultivation and stewardship?
I got lots of great examples of that. So I worked for Catholic hospitals, and I used to always get requests from tobacco companies to fund, like, be a sponsor of our golf tournament or buy a table at the gala. And that was verboten. We could never accept tobacco money because, and I remember getting these big requests like, "We'll give you $250,000 to sponsor your golf tournament." And I would say, "Oh gosh, I wish I could accept that." But my gift acceptance policy said, "No way, no way are you going to take tobacco money, because just go to our oncology section of the hospital and you'll see plenty of people there who are suffering from lung cancer." We also never accepted alcohol money at the hospitals, because alcohols are a contributor to drunk driving and a great cause of death. Another thing that we never accepted in the Catholic hospitals are gifts from organizations like Planned Parenthood or any of those organizations that would be in contradiction to the religious philosophy of the hospital. And I'm sure that, how about you, Mui? I'm sure you've seen some gift acceptance policies.
Yeah, when I was at the Red Cross, we always looked into any opportunity, but if it was, say, a real estate opportunity, it was really being thorough with the property, doing an inspection. Are there any environmental concerns about the property that they should know about? So a lot of due diligence around specific types of gifts. And it was really interesting to see the planned giving team work through all of that with any donors that were interested.
Oh, yes. I remember we were going to get a building donated to us. And I remember going into the building with two other staff people. When we went into the basement, I could smell gasoline. Ooh. And I said to the donors, "It smells like gasoline down here." And he said, "Oh, yeah, next door used to be a filling station where gas from the gas pumps leaked into the ground. And that's what you're smelling." And I thought, oh, I'm glad nobody smokes in this group, because I thought if you lit a match, it would blow the whole building to kingdom come. The other thing is, we used to get gift acceptance policies would determine, like, gifts of stock, gifts of real estate, who could accept gifts of stock, what would be the disposition, what kind of planned giving vehicles we would use in the organization, all of those things. But the good thing, the interesting thing about gift acceptance policies here is that that's not a revenue goal. That's a strategic goal. And we're going to talk about this. And especially as it relates to the cause selling cycle. When I think of the cause selling cycle, for me, it's a fundraising cycle, but it's also a strategic cycle for closing a gift. And when we, we're not going to be able to go through all of these modules. And I know, Pearl, I hope you'll put our online, our learning portal in chat so people could go visit, because there are so many things there on our online, on our learning portal that will help through this cycle. But one of the things, if we say, for example, that we want to acquire more donors, one of the things I would look at, if that was me, I look at prospecting, that module in the cost selling cycle that talks about prospecting. And what you'll find in there is they'll talk about referrals. And these are all strategic initiatives that would go into your fundraising plan. And I'll illustrate this in the next slide. So for example, we would ask our board members, tell us anybody in your circle of influence who you think might be interested in giving to our cause. We might ask our donors, major donors, do you know anyone who might be interested in talking to us and finding out more about our cause? The other thing is, when we talk about cultivation, we see that in need discovery. And I mentioned a cultivation plan, and I think a good fundraising plan also, and I've seen this, has a cultivation component, which are strategies. Like, for example, in need discovery, we talk about questioning. In presentation, we talk about types of presentation, and you might also develop that. For example, as it relates to board members, if one of your strategic initiatives is to move your board into a more fundraising board, one of the things you might work with them, you might train them on presentation style. Something, is it going to be a memorized presentation? And I've worked with board members who were asking for major gifts in a capital campaign where we did talk about presentation style, then handling objections. So all of these strategies that you could see in the cause selling model. So it's a model of fundraising, closing a gift, but it also gives you so many strategic initiatives as you write your fundraising plan that may help you writing that plan. So I like to say that a fundraising action plan is really 2 documents. It's a written plan. And this is your narrative plan. And I'm going to give you an example of that next. And then it's an operational plan, which are goals, vehicles, and timelines. And I'm going to give you an example of that. One of the things that I like about these 2 different plans, some of these plans you may just use internally and externally, whereas an operational plan may be a plan that you just use internally. And I'm sure, Mui, in your career, you've heard from corporations and foundations and even major donors who said, share with me your development plan. How are you going to achieve this capital campaign goal? Let me see your development plan around that. So one of the things that I like about a narrative plan is that you can share it with outside groups and individuals who might be interested.
Definitely
So
helpful. And
go ahead.
tying it to the revenue goals and being able to share how a gift that they may be considering of $50,000 or $100,000 will contribute to the overall goal. Especially having a background from the University of Michigan and seeing the university fundraise through capital campaigns, the capital campaign action plans are even far more robust, talking about years of strategic planning and silent phases and everything in between. So it's really interesting that the fundraising action plan, you'll segment it to your annual fund, your recurring gifts, your events, your capital campaigns, and everything in between that will help you achieve your goals over those years.
I worked on 2 capital campaigns, and we had capital campaign plans, which were a subset of our overall organization plan. And you're right, the capital campaign did have the 4 phases: the quiet phase, the public phase, the closing phase, in which you were getting those hanger-ons who haven't made a gift yet, and then the stewardship phase, which was really, really important. And I said this before, whether it's a strategic plan or a capital campaign plan or whatever it is, it's a roadmap. And believe me, I don't think in my career, maybe you have a different experience, but in my career, in the absence of plans, I used to say, God has a laugh. So plans were really important for me as an executive trying to reach some goal, some revenue goal, or some strategic goal. So we have these two plans, and I'm going to just show you briefly. And this is really just a brief example of that narrative plan that we talk about. So again, you have the narrative plan, which is illustrated in this slide, and then you have the operational plan, which I will illustrate next. So this narrative plan, like for example, what we have here is annual gifts. Our goal is to raise 250,000 in direct mail during the fiscal year, say 2020. Okay, and then we have different tasks that we would list in this narrative. We're going to write the annual letter. We're going to select our mailing list. We're going to create the response card. All of those things are tasks that are related to this fundraising goal. We might have events to secure a sponsorship for $50,000. So what are the tasks? Create that sponsorship packet. Articulate the benefits to the donor to sponsor. Other gifts, and believe me, this is not an inclusive thing. Major gifts, maybe you have an endowment campaign, planned giving, foundation giving, corporate giving. You might also have a capital campaign. There could be so many different campaigns that you have on this narrative plan. So what do I especially like about this? Both of these documents, whether it's narrative or it's the work plan, are used by staff, development committee, and the board of directors. This might be the document right here, this narrative plan, that you share with constituencies, as Mui and I mentioned earlier, who want to see your fundraising plans, maybe a foundation or a major donor. Why I really love this narrative plan, it shows transparency. It's something that you could use outside of your organization to show what you are doing to reach your goals, to advance your mission. So that transparency is really key and important in building ownership. And that's another reason why I like the narrative plan. Typically, you're not going to send out that operational plan I'm going to show you next. Remember this, staff decides the format. Typically, a narrative section like this, a narrative plan, has an outline of action steps and strategies that you would see here, but you'll see them differently in your work plan, and financial information. Invent what works for you, people, but include key elements like relationship building, solicitation strategies, measures, assignments of accountability, and some form of a calendar or timetable. You'll see that clearly on your operational plan. So what are some of the contents of this narrative plan? Your mission, your vision, your values, your strategic goals, your financial goals, which is this first one for annual gifts. Okay, a strategic goal might be to train your board on asking for money, or bringing in another major gifts officer, or buying a new CRM system. All of those are strategic goals. The other thing you'll see here is relationship building strategies. And this, to me, is a critical component of your fund development plan. Remember, relationship building nurtures donor loyalty. Cause selling is a relationship building model of fundraising. The strategies that are outlined there go into your narrative plan, assuming that you have a goal of finding more donors, which I'm sure everybody does, or moving donors to higher giving levels, or whatever it is. You could use that model, the strategies in there. Solicitation strategies might be here. Solicitation strategies or presentation strategies are going to be different depending on the target audience. You're not going to use the same solicitation strategies, excuse me, with Mui, who could be a $250,000 donor, as you're going to use with Jack, who's a $250 donor. So you would outline these in your narrative. You'd also have strategies around retention, upgrading. All of these would be a separate section of this narrative plan. Assignment of responsibility, really important. A timetable, a calendar, resources, people, time, and money, how you're going to monitor progress and evaluate performance. Remember, there are lots of things in the plan that don't focus on money. Lots of this plan will focus on organizational development, what organizational development issues need to be included in your fund development plan. And you could put it in chat, or you could just think about that question. What organizational issues do you need to include in your fundraising plan? Some things like build a culture of philanthropy or setting up a management information system. There's lots of different things. So what you're seeing here is that narrative plan. Now, I got to tell you, I am borrowing this from my good friend who is the moderator today. And I do apologize, Mui, because I did shorten this. This is your operational work plan. And what we see here across the top, it's a simple spreadsheet. Is that correct, Mui?
Yeah, definitely.
I love simplicity of it. It's really great. I've seen lots of work plans like this. What we see across the top, or the first column, is fundraising vehicles. Then we see deliverables or critical tasks. And for that first goal that you had in your narrative plan, the annual campaign, your goal is $250,000. Here are the critical tasks you might include. What's the status? And I think you had green, yellow, and red in your plan, which I didn't put in here. Green means it's a go, you're working on it, it's going to do it, you're going to happen. Yellow is some caution, like a yellow. And then red means that there's something that's prohibiting you from doing that. Then you have the team leader. And I noticed in Mui's development plan, he was on the team leader of every single initiative in that plan. So hopefully you won't have to do that in your organization. You could share it. Then you have the months across the top. What's going to happen in April, which, by the way, happens to be past? What's happening in May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December? Then the critical question at the end here, which is really what I like, what is the measure of success? So that is a fundraising vehicle, we're going to call that. That's the annual campaign, which is a fundraising vehicle. Under there, we have acquiring new donors as a strategic goal in our work plan, okay? So what's the goal? To acquire donors and raise $500,000. I know that's lofty. So then the deliverables or critical tests. Look at prospecting and cause selling, okay? We're going to get referrals from board, donors. There are actually 10 different ways to prospect in cause selling prospecting, but I've only listed 4 here. Referrals, actually, it's only 3, and I apologize that I have 1, 2, and 4. I guess I skipped 3. Referrals from board donors, networking, like going to the Chamber of Commerce, your events, prospecting at your events. All of these are things. What's the status? Who's leading that? And I'm going to give that to Mui again, because I know he likes to go to those Rotary Club meetings and get one of those mugs after he talks. And then we're going to ask board members in April for referrals. We're going to ask major donors in May, etc. So this is the translation of your written plan into an operational plan. And it's your roadmap. This is your roadmap. This is what you are going to be accountable to. You know, I love this kind of plan, because if someone said to me in May, hey, Jack, how come you haven't raised $250,000? And then I would look at that and I'd say, well, that money is not going to come in until November and December of this year. It has deliverables and tasks, timelines. It's a measure of success. It's very transparent, and it has accountability. Any questions? Go ahead, Moe.
Yeah, if we go back to that slide, a few things to chime in with as well. You know, at Maven Project, I was the Chief Development Officer, and on a lone island, I got to hire part-time staff as a development manager, as a branch manager. So between the 3 of us, yes, it was a lot of team lead actions items landed on me, but I had to steer the ship and make sure that we were achieving the goals and have the flexibility that we needed. If we didn't maybe get to something, planning it through and seeing how we were going to get at it and what timeline was reasonable for a team of 1 and 2.5 part-time people. So that was definitely a challenge at a smaller organization. Some of the other measures of success that we could put in here too is like the number of gifts. What was the retention of the donors from the previous year? A lot of different success factors that you should also consider, including and making those your key performance indicators for review, or somebody who has a major gift portfolio and seeing what their retention in that portfolio looks like. So a lot of creative ways that you can get into the staffing side of your fundraising action plan, what the team looks like, who's going to be responsible for what, and then translating that into their performance reviews as well.
Yes. And I think, since this for like a major gift officer, which I was a major gift officer once a long time in my career, how many cultivation touches on potential major donors did I make in the month of May? How many coffees or lunches did I have? As well as how many gifts I closed from major donors. All of those were included in this plan specifically as it related to me. If I was a planned giving officer, it would be how many planned gifts did I chat with a potential planned giving donor? What did I show them? What was the connection? And then, of course, closing planned gifts in a capital campaign, all of those things. I mean, this could get to be really specific. Again, I'm going to say the wonderful thing about why I like this plan, Mui, that you created. It's a simple spreadsheet. It's an Excel spreadsheet, and you could make it as complicated as you want. Remember I mentioned earlier about stewardship plans and cultivation plans? You could have separate pages for cultivation, stewardship, special event, organizational strategies that are not revenue goals, like training your board or moving them from an ambassador to an asker along the K Sprinkle Grace model of board development. All of those things could take place in here. And the thing that I liked about it is that it gave me a sense of direction. It was a roadmap for me. I knew where I had to go and what I had to accomplish by months. I didn't get a good idea. I mean, sometimes a board member would say, hey, what about doing this? And I say, well, here's my plan, guy. Where am I going to fit that into this plan? Or let's do a special event. Let's do a big gala in March. And say, well, it's not really in our plan. And the good thing about this, both the written and this operational plan, approved by the board. So I wrote this plan, or I wrote it with others, but I got board approval, and that ensured me that I wouldn't have to go with a good idea. So any questions so far before we go on to marketing and communications? Anything in chat or anything you want to share with me, Mui? I see some chat coming up.
Yeah, we've been asking some questions in, and we will keep you posted on anything that comes through.
Okay, sounds good. So the third plan that we're going to talk about today is the marketing plan. And remember, the marketing plan emerges from the strategic and fundraising plan. Doesn't exist on its own. Marketing doesn't ask what's in it for the organization. It asks what's in it for the donor. Good marketing means your donors, your volunteers, and your users of your services will know what you are offering them and what they need and how it will affect them. That's really important. So I think the marketing plan starts with a few key things. One, it's a situational analysis. You have to look at what your organization is doing and the environment that you're working in. This is typically accomplished in all three plans by doing what? A SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And that's a key thing to do in all three plans. Two, the second part of the marketing plan is to define the marketing objectives. What do we want to accomplish? How do we do that? We do that by having SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely goals. That's what we decide, number 2. 3, we choose the strategies that help us achieve our objectives. Then comes the tactics that will lead us to the accomplishment of these strategies. Number 4, you review your processes and you identify metrics, the evaluation process. For example, one of the metrics and evaluation things that you might have, if you're using an email marketing strategy, how many opens did you have? How many people clicked on a link to your website, and then what happened to them at your website? Google Analytics, Constant Contact, they all do these kinds of metrics, and that helps you evaluate your marketing efforts. And that was number 6. What is communication? It's building awareness and motivating action. That's what it is. Communicating messages with a purpose. There are 2 types of message in the nonprofit world. Those intended to influence attitude, and I'll give you an example of that. Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Their whole messaging is around influencing attitude. Friends don't let friends drive drunk. That's a message that's meant to influence an attitude. And those intended to influence action. And we call this influencing action direct response marketing. We sometimes refer to it as direct response fundraising. You want to help the poor in Ukraine or war victims in Ukraine, then make a gift. That's direct response marketing. Okay, so those intended to influence actions or communications generally based on advertising and promotional initiatives. And there are lots of interesting things around marketing that I do not have the time to go into right now. So what are some of the activities that are part of a marketing plan? Well, the 3 big things for me are research your prospects, your donors, your constituencies. Then once you research them, what they want, what their needs are, what their interest is, their values, etc., then you segment them. I'll give you an example. When I worked in healthcare, if MUI called me up and said he was interested in oncology, I would immediately place him into a segment for marketing around oncology. If he called me up and asked me if he was interested in behavioral health, he went into that segment. That what we do with marketing. Then the second thing I would do with MUI is I would target my communications based on his interests. Would I send MUI, who's interested in oncology, something about cardiology? No, that's not his interest. So I would target my messaging to him based on that. And of course, creating that marketing plan requires all of the same things that we talked about that go into a strategic plan or a fundraising plan. What are some of the elements of a good marketing plan? Positioning. Positioning your organization requires that you set achievable goals, you identify target markets based on that research you did earlier, you articulate the messages you want to convey, and you outline specific strategies. Then the second thing you do in a marketing plan, the matrix of marketing elements. What are the matrix of marketing elements? What channels are we going to use to communicate with MUI? If he's a millennial, which I think he is, we want to make sure that we're not sending him paper mail. We're going to communicate with him via text message or emails, because that's the preferred method. Okay. Then we do direct links to our supporters. Marketing online is one way we do that. It's interesting. The last point I have here is marketing, multi-channel marketing. And if you guys are members of AFP, there is a great article in Advancing Philanthropy from last issue on multi-channel marketing. And I'm just going to briefly describe it as you use all the channels that you have available to you online. You remember your prospective donors, whatever it is, whatever various things are. There's a great article. I urge you to go and read that in Advancing Philanthropy's last edition, AFP. Okay, community share. What plans will you bring back to your organization? And they're gonna, please share that in chat. And Mui, let me hear what you're seeing there.
We'll wait as the chats come in. You know, this was definitely the main reason why I would attend a lot of webinars, is being able to soak up everything that I learn and what other organizations are doing differently. So we have a marketing and communications plan from a few people, definitely interested in bringing that back to their organizations. And hopefully you have a marketing and communications team. I know a lot of organizations maybe put that in with development as well. Or even if there is a separate marketing and communications department, maybe they don't have a development dedicated person. But I've been part of teams that have had a variety of staffing models between marketing and development. But few more people saying that they're interested in the month-by-month development plan. They're taking away segmentation and marketing and communication, creating a transparent campaign plan that can be shared with funders and donors. Senior leadership team currently reworking the strategic plan, which is so exciting. And in June, they'll be reworking their stewardship and marketing calendar to align with that better.
Nice.
That's fantastic. Doing a work plan, developing research tactics, and identify prospects and constituents. Great.
And Karen, I really urge you to take a look at, excuse me, some of those. I think prospecting is one of the webinars we have up on our online portal. Excuse me. Pearl, please share that link when you get a minute, because take a look at that, because it's really great. And Victoria, I love your fundraising plan for FY 2023. And guys, if you want to share some of your plans with us, we'd love to see them. It's easy for you to do. There's our online mylearningportal.org. I urge you to go there. Remember, we have CFRE credits for everyone. Talk to a couple CFRE candidates this month who are just shy of getting their certification because of not having enough CFRE credits. Go there.
So as you were typing up these questions, it's just a friendly reminder that this slide deck, along with the recording, will be added to our online learning portal, which the link is just in the chat. In the following days, it'll be there to review at your leisure. You'll also receive an email to access the free portal. You can keep track of your CFRE credits there, see all of our past ones, and learn about our future ones as well.
Right.
Our next webinar is going to be on June 8th on handling objections, getting to the yes with Hannah Berger. She's fantastic. She just presented with Jack at AFP in Las Vegas earlier this month. And if you haven't been in one of her sessions before, you are in for a treat.
And Mui, didn't you, is it one of your webinars up there? What was the title of that one? I think I was the moderator of that one.
Yeah, that was stewardship and fundraising, I believe. Yeah, that was in March. It was a great.
I have one up there from January. Of course, it's a much younger picture of me because 5 months ago I was much younger. It's on 10 epic fundraising fails, and it was a very popular one. I love doing it. In fact, I'm going to do it for a consortium of nonprofits on June 9th. So definitely take a look at those. I love the online portal. I just think it's great, and it's free. FREE. I mean, that's just awesome. What other kind of any other questions?
Yeah, we're getting a few comments around the portal looking great, and is there a stewardship matrix on the portal is a question.
I'm not sure there is, but if you reach out to me, I could send you, I'm happy to send you one that I've used in other classes, a stewardship matrix. I'll give you an example. One of the things we did at the hospitals. If you sent $250, you got a thank you letter from me. If you sent $2,500, you got a thank you letter from me, and you got a thank you note from the physician in the program that you supported. If you send $25,000, you got a thank you letter from me, you got a thank you note from the physician, and the chairman of that department, say oncology, would give you a call. If you send $250,000, you got a thank you letter from me, you got a thank you note from the doctor, that you got a call from the head physician of that department, and then you got invited to lunch at the hospital. That was our stewardship plan. Depending on the donor level would be the amount of stewardship you get. But as Mui and I talked about in our cultivation and stewardship, treat everyone like a major donor because they think they're a major donor. So when you're putting together that stewardship plan, be sure to thank them in the way that they tell you they want to be thanked. And you know how you find that out? Ask them. How
Great.
many times would you like me to connect with you, Mui, over the next year for your $250,000 gift? Yeah, he may say, you know what, Jack, you're boring. So I only want you to connect with me once and then send me a thank you letter. But
Well,
that's
we're
okay.
colleagues now, so I guess we have to stay in touch on a weekly basis. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll deal
How,
with you, I suppose. Um, so another question in the chat, in the Q&A feature, given how changes are happening at a rapid pace, does it still make sense to have a strategic plan that is longer than 2 or 3 years?
I like to say this, Mui. If you wrote a strategic plan in December 2019, or a fundraising plan in December 2019, it was pretty much irrelevant in January and February of 2020 because of the pandemic. But here's what I think that you should do. I think it's still okay to write these 2 to 3 year strategic plans, but be aware of rapid changes that may occur. Be able to pivot. And so many organizations were able to pivot as a result of COVID and become, Zoomers, which now is a verb. Zoom is now a verb. It used to be a noun. Zoomers to cultivate and to steward donors and even to solicit donors. So be able to pivot. It's really important because I think the one thing we've learned from the pandemic, things happen rapidly.
Definitely, the tidbit on pivoting is definitely critical. Yeah, so those are the questions that I'm seeing now. If there's any others, feel free to put them in the Q&A feature or in the chat. A lot of things that I learned today, so amazing, and it's interesting to see how different organizations respond to different things as well. Whether they're a small organization or a large organization, a lot of what we shared today and discussed is applicable to any charity. So all of these fundraising action plans and tips are well appreciated.
Any questions at all, please let us know. We're happy to answer any questions. We have some time. We're going to let you get going early. Mui, how can people connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn under my name. That would be the easiest. And also my email address is my first initial M for Muhi, and then Khwaja, KHWAJA @nu.edu.
And
Thank
definitely,
you for putting that in the chat.
yeah, and definitely I am on LinkedIn as well. It's one of the few social media sites I'm on. And it's Jack Alato, and there's my name on the window. And you could connect with me at National University at Alato, JALOTTO @nu.edu. And if you have any questions, I think both of us are going to be available to answer email questions, anything going forward, we're happy to answer. And like I said, I'd love to see any plans you have. Anything, if you have any questions around your plans, share them with us. They may wind up in a webinar sometime in the future, but I will protect your name and your organization. I do change things a little bit, as Mui can attest from what I showed today. You know, I love to share things from successful plans that you may have. If you have a capital campaign plan that's on a spreadsheet, send it to us. We'd love to see it. It's me being a nerd and Mui being a nerd, fundraising nerds that we are. There you go with the glasses. And love to see any plans. Any questions at all for us? Anything in chat, Mui? I
Yep,
see
we
one
just had one
question.
come in. Yep, I have a
Okay.
question regarding direct mail efforts. How large are your mailings and what criteria do you typically use? For example, someone has donated in the last 3 to 5 years in kind or monetary is something that we use, but I'm wondering about the criteria that others may use for their own direct mailings. This is a great question. I still believe in direct mail. I have a small organization, American Muslim Community Foundation, so we typically go wide with our direct mail pieces, and we have a strong push in the month of Ramadan and a soft push in year end from Thanksgiving to the end of the year. So the strong push, we usually do a stuffed mailer and do a whole color piece that goes to every donor in our mailing list. And our organization's only 6 years old. So thinking of your 3 to 5 year in-kind or monetary list, like we go with every single US address. In year end in December, typically that's the one where we segment a little bit more. It's only a postcard and it's sent specifically to monetary donors in the last 5 years. So that's what we had used at our organization. But larger organizations, that might be too costly for them to do. So they have to get very narrowed and segmented with that. But hopefully some of those things helped.
So my question, whenever I hear a direct mail question, an annual giving question, I always like to ask, what's the purpose of a direct mail? And it seems to me there are 3 reasons, okay? The first reason is to acquire donors. The second reason is to renew previous year donors. And the third reason is to do research on your donors to see who can be moved to a higher giving level. So annual campaigns are really important. If you look at any donor pyramid, at the bottom, at the base are your annual giving donors. And your goal as a fundraising executive is to start at the bottom of that pyramid and move people to higher giving levels. So after the annual gift, you want to move them to major gifts, maybe the capital campaign gifts. And as you move up the pyramid, the number of donors and prospects decreases, but the amount of the gift increases. And at the very top, guys, is planned gifts. So one of the things that I love about cost selling, I'm going to give another ad for cost selling, is that it provides you with tools. It gives you tools to be successful at fundraising. The donor pyramid is not a cost selling tool, but it's a management tool. And if you look at our model of fundraising, like social styles, that's a tool. Handling objections. Our goal is to give fundraisers, beginning, intermediate, advanced fundraisers, the tools to handle objections when donors or prospects give them objections. Presentation, it's a tool. And what I think, how it relates to what we're doing today is that these plans, the fundraising plan, the narrative plan, the operational plan, they're tools. They're roadmaps, and they bring about a successful close in asking for gifts, in cultivating donors and sorting them, etc. Is there another question in Q&A?
Yeah,
or otherwise, I'm going to wax for the next half hour about
no,
cost. And
no, we
everybody's going
definitely
to
have
say,
another one.
cut him off. I have to go to another meeting, Jack. Sorry, I got to leave. Go ahead. What's the question?
So donor prospecting and diagnostics for different size organizations would be a great topic. So it's a suggestion for future topics that Fundraising Academy can do. Also, many nonprofits, especially small ones, are challenged with finding fundraisers. What can be helpful? I think these are great topics in finding talent and mentoring talent and retaining talent. Definitely things that we should be looking for, and what are those things that would make a good fundraiser. So these are great suggestions for future.
Yeah, I love that. I love that donor prospecting, and I do urge you to look at our webinar on prospecting. And as I said earlier in the course of this presentation, there are 10 or 11 prospecting tools that we outline that really, some of them are going to cost money, like wealth screening, or, but some of them are just going to be you doing research, doing your homework. For example, look in your database. What does a typical donor look like? And once you understand what that typical donor looks like, then go out and find people who are similar to them and solicit them, cultivate them, start that process, that cause selling process. Here's the other thing. I love Rosso's concentric circles. And guys, I urge you to Google this. At the center of the circle are 3 little sections: board members, major donors, admin, and staff. You start at the center and you start asking those 3 groups to refer people to you, to suggest names. We talk about this in our prospecting module. You asked your major donors, who do you think would be interested in this cause that you support? Then the other thing that happens, they may introduce you to that person. So that this is how you build that donor base. I think the number one question I have received, no matter where I've taught, what I've done, is how do we acquire donors? And acquisition strategies are very clear in that prospecting module. And I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure if it's not up there now, stay tuned. It will be in the online portal eventually. Any other comments or questions?
Just another
Great.
one on whether
Okay.
or not today's session will be recorded, and yes, it will, and the PowerPoint will be shared at mylearningportal.org. And
I'm going to give you that. Here I am. Picture taken a long time ago, but still, you'll notice I still had no hair a long time ago. And then here is visit our online learning portal. I can't emphasize this enough. Mui and I were probably the first to sign up because we did some testing of it early on for our Fundraising Academy. I loved it from day one, still love it. I always urge people when I talk to them in my CFRE study groups to go and sign up for that. It's free. There's the address. And then finally, guys, thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks to my moderator. Thanks to the Fundraising Academy who's doing all of our tech. That's Pearl back there. And I hope you have the time for your participation and time today, and help us to continue to improve our monthly webinar series and ensure we are providing value to you. Please take a few minutes to complete our survey that will appear on your screen at the end of this webinar. We hope you are safe, excuse me, and healthy. Please enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you for all that you do to better the communities in which we live, work, and play. One of the great things about me working for the Fundraising Academy, I like to say that when your fundraising improves, all boats lift. If you're working in healthcare, you're better at it as a result of this webinar. If you're working in social services or homelessness or feeding the poor or athletics or at a university, wherever it is, hopefully your fundraising skills have improved today, and we are part of that, Mui and I, and we're happy to do that. Thanks so much, guys.
take care. Bye-bye.